The real reason. He pulls away when he starts catching feelings. Carl Jung. Have you experienced this? Everything was perfect. The conversations flowed. The looks lasted longer. He looked for you every day. You felt that undeniable chemistry, that connection that felt real. And then, out of nowhere, silence. It starts to distance itself just when you thought things were evolving, when you thought he was also feeling something true. Most women blame themselves. Was I too fast? Did I do something wrong? Did I give myself too much? But what if I tell you that the problem is not you? What if the real reason is something that he himself cannot consciously understand? Something so deep in the male psyche that Carl Jung spent years studying. What you'll discover in the next few minutes will completely change how you understand male behavior. Because when a man walks away, the moment he starts to feel something real, it's not about you. It's about psychological warfare going on inside him. And today, you will understand exactly what triggers this withdrawal. A. The hidden fear behind male vulnerability. There is a specific moment in the development of a relationship that activates something deep in a man's psyche. It's not when he meets you, it's not when you have sex for the first time, it's not when he introduces you to his friends. It's that quiet moment when he realizes that you really matter, that losing him would hurt, that this has become too real. From childhood, men learn that showing emotional need is a sign of weakness, that crying is a girl's thing, that depending on someone emotionally means not being man enough. These messages are recorded so deep that even as an adult, when he begins to feel that emotional need for you, internal alarms go off. Not consciously. He doesn't wake up thinking, I'm going to walk away because I'm afraid. His body just starts to create distance. Vulnerability for a man does not only mean opening the heart, it means admitting that he needs you, that you have power over his emotional well-being. And that goes against everything he's been taught about being strong, independent, in control. When you start to become too important, when he realizes that waking up without your message makes his day different, when he finds himself thinking about you in the middle of a meeting, something in it goes into self-protection mode. This fear is not rational. He can't explain why he suddenly needs space, because that urgency to see you has diminished. Why is it less available? Because deep down, to admit this fear would be to admit one's own vulnerability. It would confirm exactly what he is trying to avoid feeling. The cruel paradox is that the more he likes you, the more threatening it becomes. The more real it gets, the more he feels like he's missing something essential about his identity. The feeling of control. The feeling that it is enough by itself, and in this internal conflict between what he feels and what he thinks he should feel, withdrawal emerges as an automatic solution, a way to regain that sense of security that only emotional distance seems to offer. 2. The Jungian shadow and the terror of royal intimacy. Inside each person, there is a hidden part that they do not want to face. Aspects of yourself that have been rejected, repressed, buried deep in consciousness. This includes deep fears, old insecurities, parts that are considered unacceptable, and those rejected parts don't go away. They are still there, influencing behaviors in ways that the person does not even realize. When a man begins to develop real feelings for you, the intimacy that naturally arises in that connection acts as a mirror. You start to see sides of him that he hides from the world. And even worse, he begins to see in you reflections of aspects that he denies in himself. If he is terrified of emotional dependence, your constant presence in his life activates exactly that dread. If he is afraid of not being enough, the genuine affection you show forces him to confront this insecurity. Real intimacy isn't just about sharing a bed or telling secrets. It's about being seen completely. It's about letting down all defenses and allowing someone else to witness who you really are, including the ugly, scared, imperfect parts. And for someone who has spent a lifetime building an image of strength, control, and self-sufficiency, that's terrifying. He may not even consciously understand what is happening. You just know that being close to you has started to create inexplicable discomfort, like you're seeing too much, as if the mask were slipping, and instead of acknowledging that this is a natural part of any deep connection, he interprets this discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, that maybe you're not the right person, that maybe he's not ready. The terror of real intimacy doesn't come from fear of you. It comes from the fear of everything he will need to face about himself by allowing you to really enter, of the old wounds that will be touched, of the insecurities that will be exposed, from the loss of control over how it is perceived. And the distance comes as protection, a way to keep those dark parts well guarded, away from the light that intimacy inevitably brings. If you want to understand why he pulls away, the moment real feelings start to develop, and how this reaction reveals an unconscious fear rooted in his shadow, the Jung method is fixed in the first comment. 3. When truly feeling becomes a threat. Superficiality is comfortable, casual relationships, connections without depth, interactions that require nothing more than the present moment. There is no real risk. There is no true exposure. And most importantly, there is no pain possible because there is no genuine emotional investment. That's why so many men quietly navigate situations without commitment for years. But when the feelings start to get real, everything changes. Suddenly, he no longer controls what he feels. You take up space in his mind without permission. He cares about what you think. It cares if you're okay, misses it when you're not around. And each of these genuine feelings represents a loss of control over one's own internal world. For many men, losing control over their emotions is comparable to being in danger, because intense emotions are accompanied by a proportional risk of pain. If he loves you, you can hurt him. If he needs you, you can abandon him. If it opens up completely, you can use that against it. These are not conscious thoughts necessarily, but are fears operating deep within his psyche. There's also an identity component here. Many men build their self-image on the idea of being rational, logical, in charge of their own emotions. When intense feelings begin to dominate, this self-image is threatened. He's no longer the controlled guy he thought he was. He is someone who keeps checking his cell phone waiting for his message. Someone who has their mood affected by you. Someone who feels jealousy, insecurity, need. And this collides head-on with the image of himself that he has cultivated. Withdrawal in this context is not cruelty. It is a desperate attempt to regain internal balance, to go back to that state where he felt safe, predictable, in control, where emotions did not dictate the rules. He doesn't necessarily want to lose you. He wants to lose the sense of vulnerability that comes along with having you. And since it is impossible to separate one thing from the other, distancing seems the only possible solution to regain a sense of emotional security. 4. The defense mechanism he does not control. The human brain is designed to protect us from threats. When our ancestors saw a predator, the body automatically went into fight or flight mode. Adrenaline, fast heartbeat, total focus on surviving. That mechanism still exists today, only now it doesn't just respond to physical threats. He responds to emotional threats as well. When a man starts to feel like he's getting too vulnerable in a relationship, his nervous system can interpret it as real danger. Not rationally, instinctively, and then he fires the same response that he would trigger in the face of any threat, removal. Only instead of running from a lion, he's moving away from you, of the relationship, from the emotional intensity that began to create anxiety in his body. This does not happen with conscious choice. He doesn't sit down and decide, I'm going to start responding less, I'm going to create distance, I'm going to cool down. What happens is that his body begins to associate closeness with discomfort. Being close to you, which once brought only pleasure, now brings with it an inexplicable tension, a restlessness, a desire to regain personal space, and he obeys these signs without understanding where they come from. Psychological defense mechanisms operate just like that. They were usually developed in childhood as a way to cope with painful situations. Perhaps he learned that withdrawing emotionally protected him from disappointment. Perhaps demonstrating need has been punished at home. Perhaps vulnerability has resulted in abandonment or rejection before. These experiences create automatic response patterns that are activated whenever similar situations arise. The problem is that these patterns do not distinguish past from present. It doesn't matter if you're different from the people who hurt you before. It doesn't matter if the current situation is completely safe. When the emotional trigger goes off, the defense mechanism automatically kicks in, and he will do anything to convince the conscious mind that the removal is justified. It will create rational excuses. It will point out flaws in you that didn't matter before. It will fabricate logical reasons to explain a process that has nothing logical about it. 5. Why men run away from just what they want. Every human being wants genuine connection. He wants to be loved for who he really is. He wants to have someone who understands him deeply, but at the same time, these desires compete with another equally strong impulse, the fear of being hurt. And when fear wins this internal battle, the person runs away from exactly what he wants most. With men, this happens in a particular way. They are socialized to value autonomy above almost everything else. From an early age, they hear that they need to be independent, self-sufficient, capable of solving everything on their own, that needing someone is weakness. So when a relationship starts to create that sense of interdependence, where it naturally starts to rely on you emotionally, it clashes with all the programming he's been given about what it means to be a man. He wants you, but it wants you without having to need you. He wants the connection without the vulnerability. He wants love without the risk of loss. And since this is impossible, he is trapped in a paralyzing conflict. The more he desires you, the more frightening the possibility of losing you becomes. The more important you become, the more power you have to hurt him. And the only way to eliminate that risk is to eliminate the importance that you have. There is also the factor of past experiences. If he's been deeply hurt before, if he's trusted and betrayed, if he's given in and been abandoned, his brain has learned a dangerous lesson. Intimacy leads to pain. And it doesn't matter how many times you prove that you are different. The part of him that has been hurt before does not operate logically, operates with standards. And the recorded pattern is getting too close results in suffering. So he runs away. Not because he doesn't want you, but because they want you too much and don't know how to deal with the intensity of it. Because the desire for you simultaneously activates all of his deepest fears about connection, loss, vulnerability, and pain. And when the mind is divided like this, when there is an internal war between desire and fear, withdrawal comes as commitment. One way to have a little bit of both. Keep yourself at a distance that doesn't force you to confront your fears while also not having to completely let go of yourself. 6. The emotional armor and its invisible price. For years, many men build layers of emotional protection. They learn not to show when something hurts, not asking for help even when they need it, solving everything internally. This armor is developed as a response to a world that punishes men for showing weakness, and it works. It protects him from judgment, from rejection, from being seen as less capable. But that same armor that protects you from the world also insulates you from genuine connections. Because real intimacy requires you to take off your armor. It requires you to show the wounds underneath, that you admit that it hurts, that you need it, that you don't have everything under control. And for someone who has spent decades building these defenses, taking them out isn't just scary. It seems impossible. When you really come into his life, you're asking for something he doesn't know how to give. Not because he doesn't want to, but because unlearning decades of conditioning doesn't happen overnight. The armor is so integrated into his identity that he doesn't even realize he's wearing it anymore. For him, that's just who he is. The guy who doesn't need anyone. The guy who solves everything by himself. The guy who doesn't get emotionally shaken. The price of this armor is precisely the inability to receive what he wants most. He wants to be loved completely, but he can't show himself completely. It wants deep connection, but keeps people at a safe distance. He wants you to stay, but he can't open up in a way that gives you a reason to stay. And when you start pressuring, even gently, for him to open up more, to share more, to be more emotionally present, the armor only gets stronger. He interprets his request for more emotional closeness as a demand, as pressure, as a threat to his autonomy. And instead of acknowledging that armor is the problem, he blames you for asking too much. Because it is too intense, for wanting more than he can give. And the distance becomes the way to keep the armor intact, of not having to face that maybe she is no longer serving him, of not having to do the painful work of dismantling it piece by piece. The tragedy is that he will probably look back and realize too late that he lost something real by insisting on maintaining walls that no longer protected anything. That he was so busy defending himself from an imaginary danger that he blurted out exactly what he needed. But at that moment, the armor seems more important than love, because without her, he doesn't know who it would be. 7. Signs that he is struggling with his own feelings. There is a huge difference between a man who is not interested and a man who is too interested and fighting against it. The first one simply disappears. It does not show inconsistency. He doesn't come back. The second creates a specific pattern of approach and distancing that reveals exactly the internal war going on. It pulls you close. Things get intense, connected, real. He looks for you, opens deep conversations, shows affection, and then suddenly it retreats. It is distant. It takes time to respond. He acts as if none of this had happened. This accordion move is not about you having done something wrong. It's about him getting too close to vulnerability and automatically retreating. Another sign is the contradiction between words and actions. He says he doesn't want anything serious, but acts like he's in a relationship. He sets up consistent meetings. It cares about how you are. He is jealous. Or the opposite. It talks about the future, about you, but it cannot sustain emotional presence in the present. These contradictions show the divided mind. One part wants, the other is afraid. Also notice how he reacts when you have very intimate moments. Not physically necessarily, but emotionally, when it opens up more than usual, when you have one of those conversations that creates real connection. If soon after that he creates distance, if he is less available, if it takes longer to respond, it is because that proximity activated his internal alarms. He needs to step back to regain a sense of security. Pay attention to whether it sabotages the relationship in subtle ways. He picks fights over small things. It points out flaws in you that didn't bother you before. It creates problems where there are none. This usually happens when he is feeling too much and needs reasons to justify the withdrawal. If his brain can turn you into a problem, then the withdrawal becomes logical instead of scary. And perhaps the most telling sign, it always comes back. No matter how many times he walks away, he eventually reappears. Because deep down, he doesn't really want to lose you. He just wants to lose his fear. Then he tests it. He moves away to see if he can stay away. He discovers that he can't come back. And the cycle repeats itself until he finally faces his own fears, or until you get tired of being the victim of his internal war. 8. How to recognize if he will come back or walk away forever. Not all leave is temporary. And knowing the difference between a man who is processing intense feelings and a man who just doesn't want to invest can save you months of unnecessary suffering. The former eventually finds the courage to return. The second one doesn't come back because there was never anything true to recover. When the feelings are real, but the fear is too, you see effort. Even in the distance, there are remnants of care. It does not disappear completely. It still responds. Even if it takes time, it still shows some level of concern for you. Moving away is more about creating space than it is about discarding you. And periodically, he tries to get closer together, showing that the connection between you has not been forgotten. But if the withdrawal is accompanied by total indifference, if it treats you as if you never meant anything, if there is no attempt to keep in touch or to explain what is happening, then the interest has probably never been as deep as it seemed. Because when feelings are genuine, even scared, there is an inability to simply erase the person as if they did not exist. Another important indicator is whether it demonstrates any kind of inside work. Is he seeking to understand his own issues? Are you going to therapy? Are you trying to grow as a person? Or are you just repeating the same patterns with several different people? A man who really wants to overcome his own fears will eventually do the necessary work. A man who only wants the comfort of the known will continue to run away indefinitely. Ask yourself too, how long are you willing to wait? Because even if he comes back, even if he eventually faces the fears, it could take years. And during that time, you're putting life itself on pause for someone who may never get to the point of being emotionally available. Sometimes the most loving choice you can make for yourself is to keep moving forward while he figures out what he needs to figure out. If he comes back and has really changed, you'll notice. Not in words, but in consistent actions. He will be more present. It will show less fear of vulnerability. You will be able to sustain intimacy without running away. But if it comes back and nothing has changed, if it's the same pattern of approaching and moving away, then you have your answer. He's not fighting to stay, he's struggling with himself. And as long as you are the battlefield of this internal war, you are the one who will bleed.